Hello and welcome to the matchup presented by Unibet alongside Dale Lolley and Matt Williamson, who you hear on The Drive on Steelers Nation Radio. I'm Rob King. Thanks for being with us as we get you ready for a critically important matchup between the 8-7 Steelers and the 8-7 Seahawks in Seattle. This is a game that has huge playoff implications for both teams. If Seattle, who's the 7th seed right now, wins their remaining two games, they're in the playoffs. If the Steelers win the remaining two games, their chances go from about 10 or 12% now to 92%. So not completely in their own hands, but obviously this is a game they need to win, pretty much need to win to get into the playoffs. So obviously each team knows what's right in front of them here, Dale.
Yeah, and it's really, if you look at the way things break down for both teams, it really sets up like a playoff game. Because, if Seattle loses, there's enough 7 and 8 teams in the NFC, a couple of them playing each other this week in Minnesota, Green Bay, that one of those teams could jump them pretty easily if they lose this game. So very critical. Obviously, we know the Steelers situation where they have to win both. You got to get it done. You got to get it done on the road.
Yeah, and you mentioned on the road, it's one of the toughest places to play in the league. Seattle now, after a 4-game losing streak, they came back really hot and won these last 2 games pretty much in the last minute of play. Steelers made a quarterback change last week with very good results. So there's a lot going on with both these teams.
Yep, they're back to their quarterback, Drew Lock, to Geno Smith,
right.
But both of them engineering last-minute winning drives for them as they improve now to 8-7, the same mark as the Steelers. Let's take a look at the keys here as we look at the Steelers' offense now. And Matt, let's begin with you because it's getting that running game going against a Seattle team that gives up a lot of rushing yards.
Without question, especially the last 3 weeks. But we could almost say this every week. I mean, looking at this Steelers team all season, so much starts with their running game. When they're successful running the ball, they're really hard to play against. They can control the tempo. They can take more shots downfield. And you mentioned on the road in Seattle against what's been a pretty weak run defense, doesn't have a lot of beef in the middle. I think they really need to start by pounding the rock.
Yeah, and one way to take the crowd out of the game is to come out and run the ball effectively and just kind of, ease the ball down the field and just kind of suck the life out of that stadium.
The other thing, too, is that it could get you hopefully into third and manageable. This is a Seattle defense that's very poor on third down, 31st in the league, so maybe running the ball helps them do that. Another thing that could help them is when you get to the passing game, and we saw Pickens obviously had the huge game for the Steelers, but this is a zone-heavy defense, the second highest zone percentage in the NFL. Your key is maybe getting Deontay Johnson involved.
Yeah, he only had 2 catches for 15 yards last week, Rob, and that, Cincinnati was playing a little bit more man. You saw Pickens light that up a little bit. Seattle's more of a cover 3 team, so you're going to give up some of those underneath catches. That's what Deontay Johnson really stars at, and if they can do that, get him involved this week. As we saw, because of the first matchup against Cincinnati, where Pat Freiermuth went crazy, they were doubling Pat Freiermuth, forcing the Steelers to go outside. Now I'd expect Seattle to maybe give George Pickens a little bit more coverage, and that it should open things up for Deontay Johnson this week.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. This sets up for a nice Deontay game. You would think you'd get some single matchups there. And what's interesting about Johnson lately is we all know about the long streak he had without any touchdowns. Lately, he's scoring touchdowns, but not racking up the yardage that he had before. So it's kind of been a flip.
Okay, so let's get to my key then, which is that, you guys mentioned this, the crowd noise, all those other things. If you get into a third and long situation, if you get into obvious passing downs, to me, Broderick Jones against Boye Mafe, they have a lot of good pass rushers, but Mafe's their best guy. He's their most explosive player. He usually winds up lining up where T.J. Watt does for the Steelers on that left side instead of the traditional weak side that you see with a lot of pass rushers. So it looks like Broderick Jones and Mafe, I think they're going to get lined up, and Mafe's a guy that the Steelers have to be concerned about.
Yeah, and he's a speedball off the edge, kind of like the Steelers outside linebackers as well. But he's part of that light front. So to your point, Rob, if you can run against these guys and stay out of those third and longs, well, that would be a big part of playing in this one.
Yeah, and Maffe's in his second year going against a rookie right tackle. Mafe took a big step this past season. They've got a handful of talented edge guys, and even their interior guys on passing downs are dangerous. This is a team that has a lot of sacks, and while they really are poor on third downs, I don't want to be in 3rd and 5, 3rd and 8 in that building.
Yeah, you figure it's going to happen.
Sure.
So hopefully limit the amount of times it's going to happen in this game, and maybe what you do to attack them when that happens. All right, each week Steelers trivia and game day picks are available for you for a chance to win some really cool prizes. Let's get to our Yins Chat question this week. George Pickens, receiving yards, over or under 70.5. Now, coming off of Pickens' big game last week, I would be tempted to say over, but because of what we've discussed, that I think the Steelers are going to go to Deontay Johnson more because of this zone defense, I'm actually going to go under on this one.
Yeah, I think I am too, Rob. I mean, I just think this sets up more of as a Johnson game. Maybe they hit one over the top to Pickens, but I can't imagine Seattle allowing that to happen multiple times as Cincinnati did last week. And their safeties are good.
The safeties are one of the strengths of the team for sure, as are the pass rushers. Kind of torn on this one because I'm with you guys. Johnson's more the zone beater. But we only saw, I mean, it only takes one for this guy. You know what I mean? And
That's it.
I'm not sure you can put that genie back in the bottle. So I think he's going to get plenty of targets no matter what. I'm going to take the over.
And it is an autographed George Pickens football
There
that
you
you
go.
can win. So
There you
maybe
go.
he's going to be delivering it to you after he runs 80 yards or so and gets that one catch that you need to put you over the top. All right, that's a look at the Steelers' offense against Seattle's defense. Up next, we're going to flip things over. We're going to take a look at the Seattle offense versus the Steelers' defense when the matchup presented by Unibet continues.
Want to get gear direct from the team? Shop all things black and gold at the official Steelers Pro Shop located at Acrisure Stadium. Get the latest sideline apparel and hats, jerseys of your favorite players, authentic memorabilia, custom gear, and exclusives you can only find here. Don't forget, you aren't game day ready without a terrible towel. The Steelers Pro Shop has everything you need to be part of the legendary Steelers Nation. Come experience the Acrisure Stadium shopping environment or shop online at shop.steelers.com.
Welcome back to the matchup presented by Unibet alongside Dale Lolley and Matt Williamson. I'm Rob King. We thank you for being with us as we get you ready for the 8-7 Steelers going out west to take on the 8-7 Seahawks. So a lot of talk about, the Steelers are 1-7 in their last 8 games out in Seattle. Their last win in 1983, Franco Harris, 132 yards. That was his second to last 100-yard game before he
Joined the
eventually
Seahawks.
Yes,
joined
right.
the Seahawks
Yes.
after that. But we're going to look beyond that to just the West Coast. The Steelers moving from the East to that West Coast time zone hasn't been great for them traditionally.
It really hasn't. 18-36 for the Steelers in the Pacific time zone. So it's been a struggle, and it hasn't mattered who the coach is, what the team was like in terms of playing and all those kind of things. But this year, 2-0 in those
Okay.
games. It beat the Raiders, it beat the Rams on the road. So maybe they've got a little something here that they've changed up that's making these games more winnable for them.
Yeah, I don't have a whole lot to add to it. I mean, 2-0 is a great start, but it's only 2 games. It's a tough, small sample size. This is a good football team, tough place to play. We'll see. I mean, it's going to be a playoff environment. I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, and we talked about Seattle on a roll right now. They've lost 4 consecutive games. Drew Lock makes his second of 2 starts in for Geno Smith, leads them on a fourth quarter winning drive with 28 seconds left. They beat Philadelphia. Geno Smith comes back last week. He has to lead another game-winning drive. By the way, fourth quarter could be an issue. Geno Smith is now tied for the league lead with 4 comeback drives that he's engineered. He did that last week, and they've won 2 in a row. And when I look at my key, for me, it's Joey Porter Jr. against DK Metcalf. Now, it's hard to kind of parse these guys out. They're the only team in the league, Seattle, with 3 receivers that have 50 or more receptions. Jackson Smith and Jigba has come on strong the last few weeks. Tyler Lockett, we know what a terrific player he is. But this is the guy that concerns me most, Metcalf. He's their big play guy. And Joey Porter Jr. did a marvelous job restricting T. Higgins last week. I suspect he gets a lot of Metcalf, and I think that's going to be a big key to this victory today.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that, Rob. And Metcalf is really the guy that kind of puts the big plays in their offense. He leads them in touchdown catches. He's the guy that they go down the field. If you look at the other receivers, they all average around 10 yards per catch. Metcalf's at 16. So he's the guy that he's their money guy on those money downs where they need something, and they do go over the top to him. So it's going to be certainly a Class A matchup, because if you look at what Metcalf does, he uses that size to kind of overpower defensive backs. Well, Porter's size on his side of it should negate some of that.
Yeah, well, there's about 50 pounds in difference probably in the weight of these guys.
different
Metcalf's
body type, yeah.
He's a top 10, yards per catch kind of guy. And just the physical, yes, Porter's got that length you love, but just the physical bulk this would be an interesting matchup for him.
He's a rare player. I mean, just walking out of the tunnel, you wouldn't think he's a wide receiver. Maybe he's an edge rusher or a linebacker.
Right.
He has a rare body type and size and physicality for the position. And he's really developed. I mean, coming out of school, he fell to the second round because he wasn't a real sharp route runner, out, slants, things of that nature. So he can nickel and dime you to death, more so now at this stage of his career. But you guys mentioned it, big plays, red zone, touchdowns, that's his specialty.
Well, that leads us to our next key, which is yours, which is the explosive plays. The Steelers need to eliminate them because Metcalf, although he's their premier receiver in that department, he's not the only big play guy in this team.
No, they've got a lot of weapons. We saw, from a Steelers perspective, we were talking about Pickens, how much an explosive play can change the game. And in this environment, they hit an explosive or two on you, it could be a long day. And their running backs, especially Walker, are highly explosive players. They have a bevy of tight ends like the Steelers have been facing lately, but Noah Fant's a former first-round pick that can really run. We talked about Metcalf. Lockett still gets a lot of targets. He's been around the block. He's the veteran. But Smith-Njigba is really coming on strong, you mentioned, too. And Steelers have allowed a lot of production from slot guys, which is where he lines up. So they have a lot of guys that can hurt you, and Geno throws the ball pretty well.
And yet, when you look at this offense, it's kind of predisposed to the big plays because my key, Rob, is stopping them on third downs. And if you look at their third down offense, you mentioned their third down defense in the previous segment when we were talking about the offense. They allow 46.8% conversion rate. Offensively, 35.5%, which is 26th in the league. So if you can stop those big plays that Matt's talking about, you should be able to get off the field quite a bit against them because they don't convert a lot of third downs.
And this is maybe one of the first times we haven't talked about the key of the edge rushers for the Steelers. Highsmith and Watt both coming off big games against Cincinnati. And you look at Geno Smith and maybe help winning the weighty downs, getting to him. He's been sacked 3 times per game in their losses, just 1.7 times per game in their victories. So a lot of things that can happen to help you win these weighty downs.
What's interesting, too, is about this offensive line. They've had a lot of different guys playing a lot of different snaps. They're searching for answers. They've had injuries. Cross, the left tackle, was a first-round pick last year. He's a very promising player. He's going to get Highsmith probably one-on-one a lot. And as usual, Watt's going to get a lot of attention on the other side. But you would think the Steelers could win up front.
Yeah, and that is interesting because they do leave Cross by himself quite a bit, almost as much as anybody in the league.
Yeah.
So that'll be an interesting matchup as well. It's a huge, huge game. As Dale mentioned, practically a playoff game for all practical purposes, a playoff game for these two teams. So, again, at Lumen Stadium on Sunday, the 8-7 Steelers visiting the 8-7 Seahawks. Kickoff is scheduled for 4:05 p.m. For Dale Lolley and Matt Williamson, I'm Rob King. Thanks for watching this edition of The Matchup, presented by Unibet.